we see the typing of an office girl, and she's sending her emails to thank her clients for the purchase of the company's products. It is terribly unfortunate that the texture of the desk was the last thing she saw. This girl wasn't able to do a single thing she had wanted in life, but maybe if another life existed. Waking up in the morning, a young Dahlia walked downstairs to see her father, Carlo, tinkering with another invention of his. He had his work to do, and lifted his daughter up to see a magic device he'd been working on. In this world, magic devices are tools and objects. Everyone in the country uses them in their daily lives. The devices make everyone's lives a little easier. They can cool a room or make it warmer. For example, using a fire magic stone can create a light out of nowhere, and using a water magic stone can create a torrent of water. With the use of a wind magic stone, cleaning can be finished in a flash. And using stones in clever ways gives you different kinds of magic devices. Dahlia wondered if that was just like using magic, but her father assured her it wasn't. There are a limited number of people who can use magic well, but anyone can use magic devices. Her father then brought the device he was working on towards her, and with her turning the dial, it projected an array of light depicting many creatures moving around. And Dahlia stared in awe and excitement at the lights. People who create these devices are magic artificers, and that's her father's occupation. Hearing this, Dahlia desired to become one as well, so her father assured her that as long as she created great works, then of course she could. This made her really excited and determined to be one great artificer, just like him. On another day, Dahlia's friend Irma was intrigued to see the Dahlia space. It was her own workbench where she drew all of her ideas. However, with Dahlia's father needing to focus on work, he ushered the two to play outside. Dahlia was a little disappointed because she wanted to read the monster field guide inside the house with Irma, but she listened to her father and the two went outside to play. While working, Carlo stumbled upon Dahlia's magic device ideas, suddenly becoming fixated on the array of potential inventions her young daughter had come up with. The housekeeper, Sophia, then scolded Carlo, telling him Dahlia would get angry if he touched her things without asking. The Dahlia space was really important to her. Outside, as Irma brushed Dahlia's hair, Dahlia confirmed her determination to be a magic artificer. She asked what Irma would want for a device. Irma didn't want anything in particular, but would love a refrigerator since her home didn't have one. However, Dahlia wasn't interested in making things that already existed. Irma then brought up how she wanted to be a hairdresser when she got older. She practices with her own hair, but since it's so long, it takes a while to dry. That's when Dahlia's brain started clicking. She bolted inside and began drawing an invention that could help hair dry faster. Perhaps using a firestone and windstone, she could create something with warm wind that would make it easier to dry hair faster. Presenting it to her father, he saw the idea for a device that could make a warm spring breeze, which she had already named a hairdryer. She asked her father for permission to make it, but he lightly laughed, telling her she couldn't right now, but one day, which disappointed her because she wanted to make it right now. However, he did believe it was a good idea. She just needed more experience before she could build it. That evening, Carlo went to go visit his buddy, Theodore Orlando. Theodore thought Carlo's status as a doting father had reached its peak, with him giving his daughter a workstation before even starting primary school. Theodore felt that was somewhat dangerous. Carlo felt sure of himself, however, since he told Dahlia she couldn't use magic stones unless he was with her. But Theodore gave a good rule of thumb, stating children don't generally heed warnings the way parents think they would. He had already raised 2 children and learned his words carry a different weight. However, Carlo fell for the trap, thinking that Dahlia was special and wouldn't cause a problem. As the 2 men went back and forth about selling Dahlia's inventions in Theodore's shop, Dahlia was up to things in her room. That night, Carlo returned home and peacefully enjoyed a drink, until he heard the screams of his daughter upstairs. He found her room engulfed in flames, and with quick thinking, equipped a magic device with a water stone to put the fire out. He then checked on his daughter, who began bursting into tears. He looked at the magic stone pile, noticing the empty firestone. He asked why Dahlia would do such a thing, since he already told her if she was gonna use stones, he should be there with her. Still sobbing, she explained she wanted to make the hairdryer as a secret. She wanted to surprise her father, thinking he'd give her lots of praise. Carlo was a good man. He didn't get mad. He accepted that's just what a kid with passion was gonna do. Looking at her schematic, he He could see the mechanism worked, but as it is now, the fire and wind come out at full blast. He hadn't taught her how to link output calculations and mixer circuits yet. He felt he could truly relate to his daughter though. As an inventor, when thinking of something, he himself couldn't stand not making it. Knowing some of the work of making magical devices can be dangerous, he made her aware there was still plenty he hadn't taught her yet, but assured her that until she was skilled enough to do things alone, they could just make things together, prompting her to embrace him and apologize over and over. That evening, the two got to work, and with the device shooting a flame out, it for sure couldn't be used for drying hair. But the build wasn't bad. Carlo determined it just needed a magic circuit to limit the energy to produce a nice, warm breeze. Hearing her father quickly find a solution, Dahlia praised him. The two continued to work on the device together throughout the night, and when morning came, he turned it on and the blow drying worked successfully. The two cheered drinks to their victory. Sophia then arrived for her usual shift. Surprised to see the two up so early, Dahlia ran up to her, joyously mentioning they finished the hairdryer. But staying up all night, she fell asleep, holding Sophia where she stood. Sophia was not happy to hear Dahlia hadn't slept, however. On top of that, they hadn't bathed either. Gross. After putting Dahlia into bed, Sophia mentioned how once she had complimented Dahlia's hair, but Dahlia responded by wishing it was the same color as her father's. Looking at the hairdryer, Sophia was impressed that Dahlia could invent such a device at a young age, and Carlo shuddered mentioning his daughter's talent. She may be even more amazing than he is. Then, as Dahlia slept, she uttered, "Dad, what kind of magic device should we make next?" And he was pleased to hear her already thinking of her next invention. However, the piece had to end, because it was time for Carlo's scolding by Sophia. Time and seasons passed. Dahlia yawned as she put on her glasses. Still having trouble completing this fairy crystal lantern, Carlo came home after drinking, poking at his daughter who fell asleep at her desk again. She then headed to the kitchen to make breakfast, and Carlo pulled out a piece of paper, wondering if she'd be angry were he to take an apprentice who ranked above her. Eating breakfast together, Carlo asked his daughter if she had any new invention ideas. She had plenty, but 3 in particular that were detailed enough. He was proud of her, and she matter-of-factly stated, "Well, I am the daughter of Carlo Rossetti, the hot water device baron." He felt she'd be even greater though. He felt she'd one day become a magic artificer who'd leave her name in this kingdom's history, even if she couldn't imagine it herself at the moment. She then put on her bag, running outside to meet up with Irma and the rest of her friends. She overlooked the town, thinking one day she'd become a magic artificer who could make people happy, just like her father. Dahlia returned home from school today, excited to share her daily learning with her father, but was surprised to see he had taken in a new apprentice senior to her, Tobias Orlando, the son of Theodore who owned the Orlando Trade Company. Tobias had apparently been helping Carlo for a while now, while Dahlia delivered documents on behalf of her father late one night. Her father's friend, Ivano, spotted her taking cover from the rain, so he invited her inside, and they both started doing their impressions of Carlo. Ivano knew he'd say something like, "It's nearly the season for a cold ale," making Dahlia tease because her father drank far too much. But regardless, everyone respected him as an incredible magic artificer. He had even invented these lanterns that many people use. When people would thank him, all Carlo would ever say was, "Magic artificers think and build, and think and build. There's never an end in sight." And Dahlia laughed at Ivano's impression of him. The one she always liked to do was, "Make magical devices that people can safely use to enrich their daily lives. Seek to create magical devices that will make someone out there smile." Carlo was truly an amazing person that everyone loved. Dahlia came home to her father wiping himself off from the rain. She felt like he should have taken cover somewhere, but swore he was close enough to not get soaked. He and Tobias were a little less soaked, thanks to the fact that they wore jackets. But still, they had the sniffles. Looking at their soaked jackets though, Dahlia got inspired. She could make something to keep rain off better than any sand lizard coat. Perhaps a fabric that's handy, light, and can repel water. So, she decided to work on a raincoat. While immersed in her work as usual, Tobias was shocked she'd be using slimes as material for infusing magic. Dahlia had tried other monsters, but slimes were the only ones in particular that seemed water repellent. Her approach to inventions was always novel and creative. She tested a large variety of slimes, and with that being her sole focus, Her friends Irma and Lucia thought she would plan to marry a slime at this point. Well, of course she wouldn't be marrying one, but still, green slimes adhered over a large area, but blue slimes were more water repellent. The fact that Dahlia wouldn't stop talking about them proved their point. Dahlia would have her friends try the prototype raincoats, of which she crafted many varieties. She and Tobias worked together, because he was also quite skilled. She worked so much, her father found her passed out at her workbench and placed a coat over to keep her warm. Reading some of her notes, he quickly picked up a solution and placed a solvent out as a hint she should mix them. She did exactly that, and crafted a material that was closer to what she was going for. Eventually, they crafted a fully functioning raincoat, and it was officially recorded as Dahlia's invention. Perfectly waterproof fabric and raincoats made of said fabric would now be paid royalties out to her. Exiting the record halls, Dahlia thanked Tobias for all his work, but he didn't feel like he did much, nor did he feel like he had her inventiveness or ability to focus, and under his breath, he said it pained him, although she didn't notice. Later, a rep from the Orlando company came to visit their home, because they were swarmed with orders of raincoats and rainproof fabrics. They worked tirelessly, especially since the fabric was now useful for wagon canopies. This even led to slimes being overhunted supposedly. At a tavern, Carlo and Theodore talked about the overwhelming success from the waterproof fabric. Carlo was grateful for Theo's company dealing with all the deals and mediation for them, while Theo complimented Dahlia's overwhelming talent. He's eager to see what she'll invent next. Theo then had some bad news. According to the doctors, he had less than a year to live. He planned on telling his wife soon, but she's not doing so well either. He was not worried about his eldest son, but more so Tobias. That's why tonight, he wanted Carlo to consider offering his daughter to marry Tobias. In return, Carlo would be allowed to use the Orlando company as a shield to protect Dahlia from things he's worried about. Carlo thought Tobias would be fine. He was quite capable. But the bad news got worse from here because Carlo also didn't have much time left either. So, he agreed to ask his daughter. The next day, Tobias and Dahlia signed this certificate of engagement, submitting it to the trade guild. They would be officially betrothed. Tobias was doing this to protect the Rossetti name, and Dahlia didn't think too much of it. However, this is when Tobias's insecurities started coming out, as he commented Dahlia was too tall with heels on. Irma was shocked to hear her best friend was engaged, and even though Dahlia seemed unaffected, Irma was concerned about how Dahlia felt for Tobias. Dahlia was objective, stating even though he was a merchant, he worked hard to become proficient at being a magic artificer. She thought that was wonderful, although it wasn't getting through to Dahlia's head that Irma was asking if she loved him. While Dahlia worked, Tobias commented her hair and glasses were a little too showy. He wanted her to wear plainer makeup, otherwise she might besmirch the Rossetti name, and she was fine with his request. It didn't bother her one bit. The two had lunch together later, where after Tobias heard how much his older brother and father praised her inventions, he somewhat aggressively placed his silverware down and told her not to drink so much while they were out. So, she apologized and agreed to it. Then suddenly, a representative from the trade company came by to tell them Tobias's father suddenly collapsed. He did pass, unfortunately, and with Tobias's older brother taking care of inventory in another country, there was no one else who could handle their business here. Dahlia calmed Tobias down, and the two worked together to maintain the company best they could. The seasons passed until one night, Dahlia met with her father at the tavern. He asked if she'd be drinking too. However, she abstained because of Tobias's request. Things at the Orlando company had been sorted out, thanks in part because of Carlo's input as well. Dahlia then remembered it was around this time last year. Her father had gotten soaked in the rain and she began working on the raincoats. Carlo remembered the excited look on her face very well. For Dahlia, the words she lived by were her father saying she should always make magic devices that people smile for. That's when the idea came to her. Carlo thought whoever taught her that must be amazing. However, she felt that whoever should drink a little less. She then poured a glass, asking that her father keep it a secret from Tobias. Staring at the window one day with Ivano, Carlo began reminiscing on all the times he'd spent with his daughter. He loved her so much. She brought him incredible joy. And when he suddenly passed out on the floor with Ivano calling out to a doctor, all Carlo wondered was what kind of magic device she wanted to make next. Dahlia rushed to where her father was being held, discovering he had unfortunately passed. Ivano described him to have died the same way he always was, smiling and joking with a gentle expression. That night, she cried over his workbench, and the dust she carried flowed at his funeral. When everyone left, she stayed behind to watch his grave, even in the rain. Even so, life moves on. Dahlia smiled, looking at the same kind of device her father had shown her as a little girl, and took off. She was happy to see Tobias, who asked her to bring her unsigned marriage papers. But before she could sign them, he apologized because he wanted to break off their engagement. He's found true love with someone else. And this left Dahlia's jaw wide open. Things quickly became somber. Dahlia asked with whom. Tobias answered, Emilia Tellini, the Orlando company's receptionist. Dahlia then quickly got up, accepting the dissolution of their engagement, and they could have their forms on that finalized tomorrow at the trade guild. However, Tobias still had a shameful look because there was more he needed to request of Dahlia in regards to Emilia. Both Irma and her husband Marcella were mad to learn that Tobias and his new girl would be living at Dahlia's new house. He and Dahlia had been engaged for 2 years at this point. So how could he bring along the woman he'd been having an affair with? Dahlia was fine. Well, as fine as a woman in this situation could be. Tobias didn't make her cry, and she felt glad Irma and her husband felt angry on her behalf. She just didn't want to deal with moving her furniture out of the new house. So, Marcella was nice enough to take on the task. Dahlia then told Lucia next. Lucia was concerned if Dahlia was alright as well, but felt it made sense. She always knew Dahlia wasn't in love with Tobias either. The two had always spoken to each other with familial tendencies. However, Dahlia never spoke particularly lovingly of him. The only fun talk they had was about magic devices or monster materials. The time reached 2 o'clock, and at the trade guild, they had the vice chair of the guild, Gabriella, and Ivano, the original administrator of the contract, there as witnesses for the engagement voiding, and also Dominique, serving as the notary. First, Dahlia and Tobias's joint bank account was closed and liquidated. Then, Tobias paid Dahlia reparations, being the one responsible for dissolving their engagement, and 28 out of the 50 gold she had put down on their house, as he needed more time to gather the rest. The notary recommended not accepting this, as changing house ownership before full payment could be troublesome. Dahlia followed these words, and this made Tobias burst out, since he promised Emilia she could live with him immediately. Gabriella calmed him down, because surely as someone inheriting his father's company, he could just pull from the company funds. After that ordeal, Ivano asked Dahlia if Tobias had always been so brash in nature, but personally, she'd never seen him act this way before. I think there were plenty of signs this guy was gonna be controlling and impulsive, to be honest. Even moving her stuff out, Tobias had ruined the new bed they had bought together and filled the house with Emilia's things before he was legally allowed to. Dahlia eventually moved everything out and returned to the home she had always known. Irma's husband offered Dahlia dinner at their place, but she refused. So he gave Dahlia a gift on behalf of Irma, knowing she'd probably refuse. Everyone wished Dahlia well, and if it wasn't her personally, it was all the adults who held a debt of gratitude to her father. She began unpacking, and by the time it was over, she was exhausted. She thought back to how her engagement was always something hers and Tobias's father had decided. But now that she's lost her dad and his backing, since Tobias had found a woman he loved, this would have naturally happened. She didn't feel the need to cry about it. In her previous life, her last memory was the texture of an office desk. She lived with her head down and had died the same way. Which is why, in this life, to prevent that from happening again, she tried to become a good wife. She worked so hard to make sure she wouldn't end up alone. But this is how things ended up. Dahlia then spotted a fire jewel, and it gave her the strength to not want to keep her head down anymore. From now on, she wanted to say what she liked and didn't like. Fortunately, she loved her work as a magic artificer. She didn't have to force herself to be with anyone. She wanted to live her second life the way she wanted, as best as she could. Eating the food that Marcella gave her, it reminded Dahlia of her father. Were he still here, she's sure he'd have also been angry, drinking, and helping her laugh this whole thing off. He would have ruffled her hair and told her to eat up. She spotted a treat from Lucia as well, and it reminded Dahlia again of all the people who were there for her. So, she toasted to them and her father. While Irma fixed up Dahlia's hair, she mentioned with Emilia being a nobleman's daughter, she must have deliberately left her pendant on Dahlia's dresser. It pissed Irma off. Because women who steal men are very calculative, she felt Dahlia had more of a right to be angry. Dahlia agreed, but amidst all the paperwork, she kind of stopped caring. She wanted to forget as quickly as possible. Irma told her, fair enough. Any man with so little confidence that he'd force a woman to look plainer should be forgotten immediately. And that's facts, y'all. Irma was confident Dahlia would find someone better soon enough. Dahlia wasn't interested in romance at the moment, but was happy to see her bright red hair again. Afterwards, the two had coffee and cake, and when the evening hit, Dahlia planned to be holed up in her tower for a while, now inspired to invent more things. Tomorrow, she was even thinking of gathering in the forest for more materials. The next day, she disguised herself as a man and put on a voice-shifting device to sound like one as well. She was well prepared, with a magic-throwing stone to deal with monsters, and a knife as a bandit deterrent. Reaching the forest, she suddenly stopped her horse, noticing a flock of birds flying away. A man in red armor fell out of the bush in front of her, desperately begging for water. Dahlia gave the man some and he thanked her before falling over. Her deepest concern was the injury on his left shoulder. She quickly concocted a potion and gave it to the man, and his wounds went all away. He promised to pay her back when he returned to the royal capital. He then gracefully introduced himself as Wolfred Scalferato, a member of the Knight's monster suppression force. Also, the youngest child of a low-ranking noble, and Dahlia was a little taken aback by his handsome looks. Where will we go from here? Like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. Also, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.